The following program is rated GE. It is suitable for general family viewing.
Welcome to the arena, which is basically the inaugural show. How many people have watched Founders Battlefield? Oh, you have. Some of you have been on it, so you must have watched it. And so the thing is, I'd like to welcome you to the arena, the first show that is happening at the Alloy. We are going to start with introductions. Ladies first.
Thank you so very much for joining us this evening. Looking forward to incredible conversations. My name is Teresa Njoroge, founder, CEO of a social enterprise called Clean Start Africa.
My name is Renee Gamal. I wear various hats. But the reason why I came onto Founders Battlefield is because I am a co-founder of a medical credit company, Checkups Medical. We operate in Kenya and in Juba in South Sudan. And additionally, I have the privilege of chairing the board of directors for Clean Start Africa.
Thank you for having me on stage. My name is Bobby Gadia, and I started a business very young, popularly known as PC World, and then went on to build something that I thought was a reasonable business. And when the 40s hit, reality hit together with it. And I was fighting for bankruptcy and divorce at the same time. But that's a long story that I've cut really short, just to hopefully maybe inspire to ask a few questions so that I don't just sit quietly there.
When we knew that 60% of the gas cylinders in the market are fake, we decided to do something about it. That's how I moved out from corporate to start a business called GOtv. Before then, as a young entrepreneur at 17, I grew 10,000 cabbages in my dad's farm. So I'm looking forward tonight to share some of the insights of moving from corporate with a lot of identity crisis to being an entrepreneur.
Name is George Ikua. I'm excited to be here. I have walked very many journeys, and in the last 3 years, I've been connecting farmers to markets. I connect horticultural farmers to UK and EU markets in a platform called Fresh Exchange. I connect fish farmers to Mama Samakis in a platform called Samaki Mtaani. And I connect women groups to institutional buyers through something called Akulima Africa. But basically, I'm the guy who talks on behalf of farmers so they can sell their food.
Allow me to introduce Mike Masharia. Please, have the floor. Asanteni sana.
Thanks, Roy, and it's great to have all of you here. My name is Michael Anthony Masharia, and it's great to be here finally with the Arena Live. The story of why we are here is quite interesting, and I also owe it to some of the colleagues we have here. I can see some of them who agreed to be among the first people to share the stories as founders. I'm happy to be here. And the journey of where we are here started in the most amazing way. I turned 50 last year, and I sort of asked myself a very simple question. What next? And recently I met some people I've been meeting for the last 15 years in my life. We used to meet regularly until I don't know what happened. So we stopped meeting, and we met 4 weeks ago. And one person asked me, I think the question for meeting was, we've not met for 10 years, 15 years, but we realized that everything we used to talk about, right, has happened somehow. Even some of the things we never thought would happen have happened, right? And he then said, let's meet and discuss some pertinent conversation. So the conversation was, it was really the day of, you spent 3 hours, somebody asked, if God was next to you, okay? Or your spiritual anchor, whoever you consider a spiritual anchor, was next to you, what would you wish for? That was the question. Just one thing, what did you wish for? And we sat there having lunch, trying to figure out what do we really want to wish for. Is it capital? Is it health? Is it everything? And I'm going to tell you what my answer was, right? And how it got to be and why we are here. I told him I would like to accelerate my talent and my gifts to be able to create joy for others, right? To use my talent and my gifts to accelerate joy for others through my lived experiences. So they told me, my friend, what does joy mean? What does accelerated mean? What does talent mean? What does gift mean? And I told him that when I sit here and I look at some of the people who are entrepreneurs here, and I can see many, they passed through my hands at some point. They came from campus. Some people came as entrepreneurs, you give them opportunities. I see people who gave me opportunities. And today I see a lot of people, when I talk to them, they say, Mike, it was through working with you at some point in your life that I'm where we are. And to me, I think that's joy. Because I never realized that working with them then, in future, they'll generate the next level of joy amongst the ecosystem, correct? And to me, I think it's joy. So I explained my joy part from there. Then I said, okay. They asked me the next question, accelerated. Explain to me accelerated. I said, they said, do you want to become younger? I said, no, I don't want to become younger. What I would like to do, I would like to accelerate my experiences at 50 such that whatever I do accelerates itself times 10. So it means, if I come and say, Bobby, join me in having this conversation to amplify this message across other markets and other people, Bobby's going to say, it's going to help me with my times 10. So my experiences through founders will amplify by having people around. All of you coming here today will amplify that joy because it means you're going to take the knowledge we learn together and you amplify that to the next generation, correct? So I have got, for instance, younger Gen Zs there who have asked for free tickets, but those guys don't have to go through the challenges we went through. I think it's very unfair for us to then say that the same generation that is right now hitting their 20s have to go through the challenges that we have gone through because we are unable to share our experiences. And for me, that's why I looked at how to amplify by getting other people in the ecosystem to change the whole ecosystem in terms of experiences and conversation. So the next question was, okay, so we have understood acceleration, we've understood your gifts. So I said, yes, gifts are good and bad. You go through challenging moments, as even a diamond has to go through carbon process, right, to become a diamond. But you look at your experiences and say, okay, these experiences I've gone through, how do they make me a diamond? And I realized that why I don't want to be younger, and I love my age where I am, and amplifies the experiences you've gone through, then create journeys that you can share with others. Okay? So my gifts are as a result of challenges and great moments that gives you your gifts and your talent. Yeah, so they said, we get it. So then we said, what's stopping you from doing that? That was an interesting question. I said, as a matter of fact, if this supposedly a spiritual person next to me or God went away and realized I have all the assets to do what I'm doing, I don't need, it means you're already living with God in you. Does that make sense? In your spiritual realm. So I decided, okay, as a matter of fact, that was a very rhetorical question because we have all the gifts. The question is what you're doing about those gifts. And I think that's why we're here. So I realized that everything that I was being asked that I have or I want to wish for, we have it with us. The question even us and where you are today, you need to ask yourself what gifts and talents you have that you're helping the next generation of entrepreneurs that eventually will change this country in one way or the other. And with that said and done, that is where we're here today. I'm happy to be here. So the team behind me here, great people who have introduced themselves. So I would not call this a panel. I'd call this shared experiences that then build what we call wisdom, which we want to share with you. And I want us to deliberate about what we consider as that. So we started this story, started this as podcast stories. So we decided to sit down, and I sat down and figured out what are the 25 years as an entrepreneur. I only worked for 3 years, 25 years as an entrepreneur. Lost lots of money, made lots of money, gotten lots of relationships. many things in your life. And I thought to myself, how do I create content that can be shared across an ecosystem for the next generation of entrepreneurs, even the current ones, doesn't matter, even the ones who already think don't realize they will go through a cycle. And actually you think you're making it. Somebody just mentioned to me when I was sitting down, oh, these are the new millionaires. He was referring to my friend. And I said, millionaires is just something in your head. I don't know where you come with this millionaire word. It's today you're a millionaire, tomorrow you're not, tomorrow you're a billionaire. It doesn't really matter. What happened is we need to start looking at systems that put us here. So what we've done is sort of figured out what is the underlying system that we can look at, and that's what we came to discuss today. And we are calling that the African Founders Operating System, which is in a way trying to figure out as African founders, what are the common threads that we see together, right? What can we learn from our experiences? Can we look at a conceptual model? Let me give you an example. You look at two people. I'm drinking Changa. One person drinking Changa. Another person drinking the best Mattel. And by the way, they're very amazing drinks here. Those who want to drink Blue Label, which my friend just got a baby, maybe we'll buy a Blue Label with him, okay? And the guy will drink Changa. Those two guys on a table can argue about alcohol. One can argue, that I want to get drunk, and one person can argue both drinks can make you drunk. But then another person will argue, me, I drink my Changa and I have 10 babies. You drink your Johnny Walker, you only have 4 babies. Maybe you drink your Johnny Walker Blue because you're too busy and you need to afford to drink the next Johnny Walker Blue. So then you have less babies, okay? I won't have to explain how that works. But then you realize ultimately, both conversations end up in the same table. But those guys can end up fighting because they're discussing alcohol. Is that correct? But if they discuss their lives from a conceptual model, there's a conceptual model you guys know called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, correct? Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you now put Changa and the Blue Label, you know where to place both of them. So if both of them, you give them a conceptual model, what will happen? The discussion within 30 minutes, they'll all agree, I know where I am, and I know where you are. So let's now just drink in peace. And I think sometimes, as entrepreneurs, we argue on tables, and sometimes we don't hear each other because we've not figured out conceptually where you are in your journey. So I find entrepreneurs constantly fighting because they've not figured out where they are in the value chain. They've never figured out where they are in the value chain. So today's conversation is trying to figure out how do we bring this conceptual model as entrepreneurs and share such that you also question yourself, where are you in this value chain? Where are you as a business? Are you in this conceptual model? Are you in the Changa drinking? Are you in the tequila drinking mode? Are you in the wine drinking mode? Are you whatever you consider in your value chain? Even water is fine. Is that correct? You have to think, but you have to question yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is that correct? So as entrepreneurs, you get through a journey and without understanding exactly where you are. And then that cycle is what kills you. So with me today, without further ado, I think all of us have understood where we are. We're going to then shape what we call the conceptual model. I'll go through the team, talk with the guys on the floor, our good friends on the table as they introduce themselves, and I'll challenge them in terms of this journey. So we move on to the next conversation. How are we going to do this? We will look at 5 frameworks. The 5 frameworks on the screen there are, let's go to the next. It's knowing that you have to go through this journey. This journey, unfortunately, is a journey you have to go through, and sometimes you go 1, 2, 3, and 3 takes you back to 1. I'm not sure how many of you have started 1, 2, then you get to 3, then 3 takes you back to 1. Sometimes everybody thinks they've reached, but until you get to a certain point, you don't realize you can start at 3 and end up back at 1. And then when you get to 3, and then you realize you need to rebuild, where do you start from? That do you hit the floor and start from 0? Or do you use the lessons that you learned to start from the next? You don't have to hit 0. You can start from step 5. Because you left step 14, and then you realize you don't have to hit the floor. You can start with the lessons at step 5. And that, to me, I think is the biggest challenge for many entrepreneurs who are going through crisis. They don't know at what point, what lessons they learned, and at what point they need to restart that. So that's the first conversation we need to have. Then the next conversation we're going to look at, and the next slide we're going to look at what are the various phases you go through. These are the real phases you go through. You go through something called external chaos. External chaos, we're going to talk about it, and that's external chaos we're going to let Renee talk about external chaos. We're going to do what we call internal turmoil. We're going to let George Kua talk about internal turmoil. This is about their personal experiences as they went through these phases, correct? We're going to look at mind and emotion. Teresa is going to run us through mind and emotion. What does it take when your mind and emotions are intertwined with the business? And what do you do when you lose it all? Do you lose your mind? What happens to your emotional state? And then the next thing is legacy and starting afresh. Bobby, you talking a little about starting afresh. Just told me just said right now. He did what? He mentioned at 40 he started again, right? That's what he said. And he said at 33 he was a billionaire. Is that correct? And at 43 he was bankrupt. So what do you do when you get to stage 4? And yet he had gone through stage 1, 2, and 3. And finally, we have Peter, who will tell us the issue of philosophy and identity. What happens when you build a business and it's so big, or you build a business and you're working for a very big business and you need to start your own business and people see you from an identity of the business that you're coming from. Or you need to exit a business, but you're so big you realize if I exit this business, who am I? When people see me in a bar, in a restaurant, in a church, in a funeral, they say, who is this guy? Is that correct? That's a question we need to ask ourselves. So those 5 states are very, very important. And then we go to the next step. We're going to talk about the emotional, the states you go through. The next step is the emotional frames in which we are at, which is number 1, your emotional state. The first thing, how you make your decisions as an individual. You make your decisions based on 5 fundamentals. Strategic, right? Strategically, you make a decision. Number 2, you make a decision based on your emotional position in terms of a decision. You make a decision based on your mindset. You make a decision based on your social. And finally, you make a decision based on your spiritual. And I'll give you a simple example. If you are going through turmoil as a business, you need to lay off people. As a CEO and a founder, you have to make certain decisions. Strategically, you have to make a decision because you know you need to lay off people. That's a strategic decision, correct? It's easy, it's common sense. But emotionally, you're not ready to make that decision as a founder because you feel, emotionally, that guy, I worked with him the last 20 years, how do I let them go? You're not ready emotionally. The next pillar you've not thought about is your mindset. Am I even ready to let these people go? Mindset. You're not even ready mentally. But strategically, the board has said, or your investors have said, you have to let these guys go. 200 people, maybe you got 300 people, 200 have to go. And second last is social. What happens when I let go of these people? What do guys talk about me? What do people say? They'll say, oh, that guy, he fired us. That guy, he did. That guy. So you become that guy. Nobody asks you why you did what you did. Nobody asks you, even as a matter of fact, I fed these guys. These guys I worked with them for the last 20 years. Nobody remembers that stuff. And finally, spiritually, how do you feel within your core, your third eye? How do you feel when you're letting these people go spiritually? Is it the right decision? So I feel entrepreneurs go through a very challenging moment balancing these emotions. And what happens, if you can't manage these emotions, you're then not able to make the decision. So eventually you either collapse, you either don't move forward at the expense of those fundamental states. So without further ado, I will sit down and we commence conversations, and I'll ask hard questions to our panelists here who have been through this journey, and I'll tell them to keep our conversation around these conceptual models. So figure out at what point did the emotional mindset setting, social setting, strategically make a decision, or even tactically understand spiritually, this decision is what I'm going to make. So thanks a lot, and we'd like to then commence from here. So I just think I'll sit and start the conversation. So Renee, would you like to start? I prefer you stand because I feel like when you stand, you sort of focus on your fundamentals.
But very early on in my life, and I mean very, very early, in my teens and in my 20s, I was noticing what I felt were injustices and then running towards them before my brain could tell my legs to stop. And so in the 90s, when I was still in university, yes, I know I have a great plastic surgeon, and I started very young. But in the 90s, I was starting a civic education center so that we could teach people how to vote, because we thought that we were going to be the generation that were going to remove the incumbent who had been in power for about 20 years by then. And that was the first time that I ever got stopped by police officers. What do you tell your mother when you've been released from the police station, and she sent you to school to study law. And then it kept showing up in various times. In, I think, my most famous arrest, I have unfortunately been, or fortunately, been arrested a number of times. My most famous one was when I made the BBC, Reuters, and Trended worldwide all at the same time on one night during COVID, when I was arrested for leading a charge to go and stop the grabbing of a public playground. Again, you would think that in my early, which is later than 25 and earlier than 60, my brain would finally have met with my legs and said, don't run into chaos. But I think that it's a fundamental part of being any kind of entrepreneur, that you're seeing a gap somewhere and thinking to yourself, I need to walk into that gap and fix it. And if it is, and everyone around you has said, what's wrong with you? Can't you just look at cousin, well, not cousin Bobby, because he tends to run into trouble as well. But you know the one that you're compared to. I suggest that it's important that you recognize that you are different, and that the external chaos that you continue to walk into is the opportunity for you to become the greatness that you were always designed for. Why? Because greatness shows up in the moments of darkness and chaos. Light, if we light a candle in this room, it makes very little difference. If we turn off all of the lights and sit in darkness, the one candle makes the whole difference. Let me suggest to you that you are that candle. So what is some of the chaos that I'm talking about? One of the slides that you saw says, you're never in just one place. External chaos will never show up outside of internal chaos. There will be that moment in your mind, as there have been many times in my own mind, and where it continues to be, where I'm thinking to myself, I'm a single mother. I now have teenage and young children and young adults. Frankly, I would hope and pray that they're nothing like me, because I can't imagine what my own mother felt like every single time she heard I'd been arrested again. I was now, joining Amnesty. I had said something on radio that had me followed home, or that had the DCI/NIS/ the various alphabet soup of people who were chasing after me and threatening me and trolling me on Twitter. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, I want to suggest to you something that Caroline Mutoko first said to me when I went on radio as a young and stupid young girl. That if you're not trending, if you're not being trolled, if people are not talking about you, your business, your product, your service in a way that has them be emotively for or against it, then perhaps you're playing in a safe space. I want you to know I'm not saying that just facetiously to challenge you and then walk away, leaving you, in flames in your own heart, in your own mind, and looking at your business. But I challenge you because of the space in which we are today. Let's not lie to one another. Our country needs people who are not afraid of external chaos. Not chaos that is unplanned and unstructured, but really to walk into the spaces and speak to the powers that be, and speak to systems and disrupt structures and say thus far and no further. How does that show up in my business today? I'm a co-founder of a medical credit company. And really that business started from chaos that I noticed, first in my own environment, and then in an environment where I was volunteering. Can I tell you a personal story? Would that be okay? Are we doing that level of open today? Yes? Okay, thank you. So in 2016, in December 22nd of 2016, my mother was diagnosed with triple negative hormone-resistant breast cancer. We hadn't gone to check her. We'd gone to check me on a routine exam. And I said to my mom, come on, we haven't been for such a long time. Let's go together. I would have given God anything for that diagnosis to have been mine. She'd gone through enough chaos. And I knew what cancer means. Because we all know in this country, as in this continent, we're one disease away from poverty. She was given 6 months to live at the time. By God's grace, and seriously, because I had deep enough pockets, she made another 5 years. But those 5 years drove me and my family to the brink of bankruptcy. And that was the chaos that invited me to ask the question, if this can happen to me with knowledge, money, information, connections, an ability to move her from country to country, what happens to the waiter who is serving you tonight if someone in their life has diabetes, not even cancer? And while I was mulling on that, because I'm stubborn, I was volunteering for Clean Start, and we were working with formerly imprisoned women, and Teresa will talk about that, and I was doing some voluntary work, and then I saw the chaos in their lives. Women coming out of 6 months, 1 month, 2 months in prison with tuberculosis, dying in sheds where they have hidden their children because they don't have anywhere to take them, and they just die of cold. And it bothered me enough for me to think, how do we resolve this? What stops people from seeking credit, from seeking doctors? Money. So can we fix money together with healthcare and create a system that allows them to get money and then get the care, and to get money at 100 shillings a day, but the kind of care I wanted my mother to go to? I tell you this, not to plug checkups medical, that's just my version of stepping into external chaos and trying to create something that works in that mess. Not for one person, not for two, not just for market women, but for women like me, for men like you, for those who are watching us. And to do it in a way that is scalable, so that it's not just answering the problem here in Kenya, but it's an African, it's a sub-Saharan African, it's a developing world, it is anywhere where people have to pay for healthcare. Because the systems that we need to create to align the external chaos to something that is going to work has got to be generational beyond us. I lastly leave you with this before I yield the floor. When addressing whatever you decide is the external chaos that so bothers you that you're unable to sleep at night, do not be afraid to align with others who may or may not be people who you knew before. I did not know my business partner before COVID. Ordinarily, we tell one another, you do business with family, you do business with friends who you've known since childhood, but perhaps that's not the person who you're destined to be in business with. And it is chaotic doing business with people who you have just met and you're trying to craft the inside of your business, the inside of your working relationship, as well as deal with external chaos. But if we don't, who will? Who will? If we don't go and defend the playground, who will? Who are you waiting for to rescue you? If we don't address, fill in the blank for yourself, gas cylinders that explode, who will? I want to suggest that you're the one that everyone else is waiting for. Thank you.
Thanks, Renee. My role today is to talk about internal chaos. I will not go into a very structured discussion of this. I'll just give you a little of my journey and what has been some very interesting transition of chaos, of internal chaos for me, and see how you can maybe pick something from it. So I was employed, I used to be a software developer. I was really good, I think, at the time. Anyway, they kept hiring me, so I must have been good or something. And I met quite a number of people here. JKG, I see you there. We used to write web software at the time. And one or the other, I ended up in a radio station, and I was working at Radio Africa at the time. I know we were not supposed to, anyway, but I was working up there, and really, really good. And we were writing software to run the station. Our big competitor at the time was up there in Londro House, and where Renee, I know, at one time ended up there. And the transition into entrepreneurship, and this is key for what we struggle with. How did you get into entrepreneurship in the first place? I did not get into entrepreneurship because I had this dream to run a business. I got into entrepreneurship because there was a service which, as an employee, I felt I was underpaid. So, like every other employee, usually software developers, if you ever dealt with them, they think they're next to God. They think if they leave, the company collapses. If you ever met them, they're very weird. So, I'm in this phase of mind. My mind is telling me I'm the greatest thing that has ever written software. And so I get out and I say, now time to recognize me. So what happens is that you're just some cog in the wheel, very talented, but you don't know. So in a very chaotic, when you enter the realm of entrepreneurship, it's extremely chaotic. There's billing, there's pricing, there's all that things, employing people. So I tried. So what I would do is I would write software at night and run around during the day and try and sell it. That doesn't work. Actually, so the software was pretty good, but it had no structure around it. But how are you telling me who is well known for writing software that I cannot be an entrepreneur who sells software? This does not, so I say it's you who is not seeing. So I remember at the time, some of the tactics so I mentioned the radio station at Londro because one thing, if you ever went to that station that was owned by a late great man, is that there were very many pretty girls in that office. So I decided since these people are not seeing my greatness of software, I am going to hire very many pretty girls, and they're going to, once they meet the pretty girls, they're going to buy our software. So, hired about, they used to be called George's Angels. So I send them into your office, about 4 of them, they bedazzle you. You are not sure whether they are here to sell cleaning services or software, but one or the other, you sign the check. I kid you not, it happened. Actually, like I'll tell you, we actually sold to a client, and he came later to ask, by the way, what did we do when the check was in the bank? So but I was like, they will catch up and see my software, and they will see how great George is. So this entrepreneurship is just an extension. And this is the thinking of most people. And I hear Leo and his friends are here. And you usually think that you're the only one who has seen an opportunity, and you're in an internal state of mind where I know it all. And it's very, very difficult for somebody in that phase of life, for you to guide them and actually build a business around them. But they are great potential by hard of listening. Actually, one of the people who tried to panel beat me is called Mr. Senano. He was there. He tried, he gave up after a year or two. This basket case, he'll tell you that story one day. But, so what happens is that as an entrepreneur, if you are the biggest asset, then it's not a business, right? Because doctors can't run hospitals. You know this. Mechanics shouldn't run workshops. And so the very thing that makes you think you can get into the business is the chaos that you're creating. I mean, if you're a doctor, you better go and start a shoe factory or something. So it's that transition, and the world beats you out because your ventures keep failing because you are the biggest problem, yet you're the biggest asset. So if you're an advertising guy, you're a guy who writes best copy, you're the biggest risk to the business. So, of course, business will transition you out of this thing by kicking you out because you can't pay your bills, because you can't make money. And now the confusion comes. And what happens is that now you're being pushed to what you should actually do. But then enters the next phase, which I entered, was the phase of you really do not know anything. And entrepreneurship is also about pride. Like, to be an entrepreneur, you must be somebody who's really, really proud and believe in themselves. Self-doubt has no time, space in this beginning. But you've taken such a beating, and you've been told that thing that you knew you don't know. Now you're in the face of I know nothing, but I must keep going. And this is when a lot of things started turning for me. But you still are saying, I will do my I know nothings until the day I have money and go do I know everything. I mean, there's still reluctance to grow. And at this stage, I remember, so I got into spaces where I'm still reluctant to see that my talent, I've still not realized what my talent is. But what I knew at this stage of I know nothing, I knew my bills. I knew my bills. I was married, had a young kid. I'm still, and let me tell you, I don't know whether the organizers are here. If you ever make a mistake and win those top 1 out of 1, those are the worst things to ever win. Because when you win those things, everyone thinks you've made it. I mean, I remember I won something, CIO 100. I didn't even have fare to come back from the event, but I had an award. You know, and everyone is saying, hey, you guy, you've made it. So there's conflict in terms of who you are. So when most of these guys you see in top 1 over 1, it's a whole problem. But as you transition, now you're in the know nothing, but you have bills. You have a young family, you have all these things, you have employees, and you enter this huge overdraft debt cycle, trying to keep wondering you don't know. And then everyone and this is a time when you start losing control, you have to let go. So now you have to bring in other partners. You've not told them what actually your dreams are. And I'll tell you, eventually that will break. For those who are in that season, it will break because it is literally impossible to attract money when you're not in your natural state. When you are not operating as you. But you cannot operate as you if you don't know what you is. And I'll tell you, if you really go back to the age of class 2, class 4, if you remember, you are in your most natural element. When you didn't do things for reward. You played football because you liked football. You like Mary because you like Mary. You like bananas because you like bananas. You are good at this, you are good at this. But you've kind of honed yourself at this stage to think, I'll only do what I like because it brings me money. And the final stage that I'm telling you, and this is where I have been this journey for the last 3 years, it's really not about, it's when you come to a meeting and say, George, what are you good at? What are you terrible at? Do your balance sheet. And to get to that point, they have to break you. And they have to break you, and you'll be broken by money. You'll be broken, of course. I mean, somewhere in the middle of this nothingness, I lost my wife. There was a big journey. I think I have all the auction companies on my phone. They're all here. I hope they're not here. You've been looking for me. But anyway, so it's that part. When I got to the point, I said, George, I like talking. I'm a yapper. I yap. I crack jokes. I'm the fun guy. What am I really good at? I'm connecting people. And what am I connecting them? Can I connect them in something that I don't understand so that I don't approach it with the idea that I know it all? Because every entrepreneur who thinks they know, that's the biggest risk to their business. While I talk about my internal mess, and you'll see, and that's why you see in our Founders Battlefield episode, I think it was episode 3, and I talk about the orphans. These are the businesses when you are not yourself. And some of us are in businesses we know we have no business being in, but we are there because of bills. We're there, and this is when Mike asks you, if God asked you, what can I do for you? There are quite a number of people who would want to reset. But there's nothing that stops you from just resetting. Because you know what? Every day is one day closer to dying. Right? So, I wish you well. We can discuss my chaos journey. This has been evolving. I'm happy to see Ike here. Ike was there, I think, in Know It All. Like people who are here, I see in I Know Nothing. And welcome you for us to be in this phase of where I'm doing me. Thank you.
So today I have the honor and privilege of handling the mind and emotion bits of entrepreneurship or life's journey. And, I begin with the question of what do you do when everything is closing in you, that you hadn't planned, that you hadn't seen come your way, and you truly, truly do not know what's the way forward, what emerges from that. And, life does throw us curveballs. And for me, I have come to identify that place or that point as a point of no return. Because about a decade or so ago, previously, I worked within the financial sector. And I've shared my story publicly. I happened to handle a fraudulent transaction unknowingly. It was a normal day at work, growing my corporate career in the financial sector. And then that particular day, we're told this particular transaction that you handled today was fraudulent. And systems have been put in place, and you have the confidence of systems taking course, whoever dropped the ball or whoever was in it, facing the consequences. But what happens when you're the one who's the fall person? Because what happened for me is I got falsely arrested, got wrongfully prosecuted, and ended up being maliciously incarcerated. So I'm sitting at Langata Women Maximum Prison with my 3-month-old daughter, my firstborn, wondering what just went wrong. How do you keep your mind focused in the middle of so much chaos, so much turmoil that you never even imagined would come your way? And I truly had to keep a positive mindset, as much as I was sitting in that largest correctional facility for women in this country with my daughter, knowing that tomorrow I've got to dust myself up and continue building not just my life, but because my eyes opened to see that I'm not the only one in this situation in Kenya. There's what we call corruption tax. Even as we're doing a business, and you could have the cleanest books, you could have the smartest speech, you could have the best product, but there are just so many things coming your way. So what do you do when everything is coming in on you? So anyway, eventually when I left prison, I set up the organization Clean Start, and as we, have this discussion this evening, Clean Start has not only been a platform where I have rebuilt my life, it's been a platform where millions of women literally in this country, on one hand, has found a platform to rebuild themselves. And I'm just so grateful to see some of our partners here who support us in that space of supporting these women rebuild their lives, offering them capital, offering them markets, and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, it's looking at the situation that has happened to you and saying, no, we cannot continue having a justice system that's not serving the citizens of the country the way it should be. And, on the other hand, and I'm just so glad to also be having the chair of our board of directors, Ms. Renee Ngamau here, is asking ourselves the question every single day: how do we rethink justice in Kenya? And we're at a beautiful cusp where, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's the police, whether it's the correctional services, are saying you've come up with a model that works, that does not punish the poor and vulnerable in this country. And can we adopt it in Kenya? But not just Kenya. Today we had a brilliant conversations with about 10 other African countries who are saying this is a solution that can work. Instead of criminalizing poverty, the hawkers, the people making the changai and so on and so forth, that's how we can handle them. So I'm, looking forward to having this discussion on how do you keep your mindset positive and emotion grounded when everything is closing down on you, because you still have tomorrow to live. But most importantly, it's not just for you. It's for the many others in that kind of a situation, finding solutions. And I look at Mike and I'm like, wow, he's seen founders. Because when you're running business or as a founder, it can be very difficult. You think in your corner, you're the only one going through, you're the only one receiving the emails from KRA. And you're wondering, oh my God, how do I respond? How do I handle this? You think you're the only one. Yeah? You think you're the only one who's not getting the profit or the funding in our case, because on one side, on our not-for-profit arm, You know, this year we woke up to Trump economics, yeah? Where 3/4 of your budget will no longer be funded from the US and other markets and so on and so forth. What do you do? So I'm so grateful for this kind of platforms, but most importantly, just sharing my insights from a mind and emotion perspective. Thank you for having me.
When you have such speakers, it's daunting to stand here and try to compete with you guys to say something that makes sense to these guys. But I'm here, so let me see what I can do. I'm going to try and stick to the concept model that Mike talked about and the emotional states. I think I experienced everything, not once, but throughout. I must have repeated it. It just went on a loop. And then I got out of it somehow. So hopefully I can share that journey with you. But before I move on, how many of you here are entrepreneurs? Well, there's quite a lot of you, and then there's quite a lot of you who haven't raised your hand yet. And then, how many of you here want to make money? I saw a lot more hands go up. Great. And how many of you here want to keep that money? Oh, good. Okay, great. So maybe I might add some value here. So let me talk about entrepreneurship through my angle. Has anyone gone on a roller coaster ride? You go to a theme park, there's that thing that goes whirly and everyone's excited, they pay a lot of money for it. Then they stand in long queues and they're excited, they want to get there. And as they're getting closer and closer, they're getting butterflies in their stomach, right? And they're thinking, I'm afraid of twists and turns, I might throw up, I might get a stroke, a heart attack. And then, as they get closer, they're even getting, hey, babe, let's just go. This was not for me. Let's do something else. And then you have no choice. You've reached the gate, and it's your turn to get in. And then you get in, and you sit down, you buckle up, and you're excited. And you're like, yeah. Then this thing starts going slowly. It starts going rising, and you're like, And then it reaches the top. And then you can see down there, and all of a sudden it goes whoosh, yeah, and you're screaming the hell out of things. Why did I do this? Why did I even think of this? Why did I come here? Finally, the thing comes to a stop. And you're like, thank God. And then you come out, and you go, hey, let's go back in the line. Let's stand again. That's entrepreneurship. That's what you're going to go through. A roller coaster of emotions, and then somehow you're just going to come back to it. And you think, I'm never going to do this, but you come back. And that's my journey. So I'm going to try and give you a synopsis of the 5 states that I went through. So if you allow me, I'll try and break my journey down from the beginning to the rise, and then to the fall, and hopefully to the comeback. So I'm 22 years old. I start my first business. 23, I get married. 27, I start my second business, Safaricom dealership, one of the first ones. And at that same time, I'm becoming a father. I have my first daughter. I'm 27. 30, I sell the business, make a lot of money. And then I have my second child. At 35, I'm a multimillionaire in dollars, not in shillings and not Zimbabwean dollars. And I'm enjoying the high life. At 42, my company, if I'm allowed to say it, was PC World, and I started from nothing, and at 42, it's become a super brand. And just like George, it's a super brand, but you're wondering, you don't have money for the next event. And at 43, I'm fighting bankruptcy, divorce, and near depression that's leading me to suicidal thoughts. 49, I'm back in the game. I'm back, I'm stronger, I'm wiser, and I'm much happier. Right? I'm living a life of harmony. Thank you. And 53, I turned 53 last week, 1 week ago. I'm living a life of balance. My partner is there. If you think that you had a divorce, you always get something better. There's always a better model waiting. And that partner of mine was very instrumental in bringing me back in the journey, bringing me back in the game. But I'll come to that later. So let me now start with the beginning. I'm 22 years old. I'm a young adult. I've been told, and I learned this from Mike in one of his podcasts, that we grow up in ages of 7. So 7, 14, 21, 28, 34. At 21, I'm a young adult. I just found out that the human brain develops at 25. So at 22, no experience, no capital, I go on to start a business. Okay? All the odds are against me. But I don't have baggage, I don't have experience, and I think naivety was my biggest strength at the time, because I didn't have anything to compare with. All I knew that I wanted to run my own business. So I went on to do business. I ignored all the stats against me, and I went on to do it. So that was my first, what I would say as a lesson, that we sometimes overthink. I was never overthinking, and maybe it was just me being too young and silly. So it worked in my favor. And I went on to do businesses. Then I started a second one. And everything was going really well. And I became so successful in my not overthinking decisions that it moved from confidence to arrogance, and I didn't even know it. Right? So now, at some point, because at 35, I'm a multimillionaire, and at 43, I'm battling bankruptcy. What happened? What happened? Well, guess what? I got caught in this trap called the succession trap of the past. Because every decision that I was making was turning into gold. So I was just going for it. And then I'm getting these people coming along the way, and they're telling me, you're doing the right thing, but you need to slow down a little. I had these people coming along and telling me that. And you know what I used to say? These guys are just jealous of me. You know, what are they going to tell me? I'm the one who built this, really. What are they saying? Why are they even saying this? And I used to just shove it off. But the signals were coming. What was I doing? Ignoring. All right, fine. Keep going. I keep going. I opened offices in Tanzania. I even had an office in my peak. I had an office in Dubai. And we were doing distribution from all over, and we were aiming for Africa. But what was my skill? And George alluded to this. He said he was a software guy, right? And then at some point, he had to run a business, and he had to move away from his skill. So we all have a superpower. My superpower was I could sell, I could market, I could think forward, I could see competition, I could see what was going to happen, I could see the trends. So I was always taking those opportunities, and I just kept going forward. But at some point, from one little branch, I had 6 branches. I had cross-border offices. The dynamics changed. And could I handle it as a salesperson? Really, no. So my strategy was good. My execution was poor. My cash flow was getting depleted. At the same time, competition in the industry was increasing, and the market dynamics were changing. But who was I? I was Mr. Arrogant. I could do it all. And I continued. Then came the fall. Now, I want you to imagine, and I don't do this, this is a disclaimer I'm going to put out there. I don't do it to blow my trumpet. I do it for you to understand what emotional turmoil I must have gone through at that time, right? So at your peak, when you are traveling the world, you've got all those fancy cars that you can dream of. As your 40th birthday present, you buy a Range Rover Sport, and you have an S-Class and a Jaguar sitting out there, and you think you've arrived. So you are in the pinnacle of your career. Everyone is looking at you as the golden boy. Started from nothing and built this empire. And then, it's all going to foreclose. Little did they know, and what I was going through internally, that I had all this debt that had piled up for the silly decisions I had made. Right? And eventually, the decision was made on the 21st anniversary of me starting that business. On the 21st anniversary, I shut the business. And that was the beginning of mental turmoil and emotions you cannot imagine. In fact, the reason I speak here now is because I wouldn't even wish my enemies to go through this. And I want to talk about this stuff so that people can learn from this, especially that Gen Z group up there. There's a lot of stuff you can avoid. When you're young, you're going to go through phases where you think you're untouchable. But really, we need to share this knowledge so people don't make these mistakes. So now, I'm literally going through depression. On my 21st anniversary, I asked my wife for a divorce. So now, 21st anniversary of PC World, gone. 21st anniversary, family, goodbye. And I make a promise to myself, the next 21 years, I'm going to live a life on my own terms. But I'm not going to give up. So, and what made me come out of this whole state was when I was attending a webinar during COVID, and the facilitator was asked one question. He was asked, what is your definition of success? So the guy goes, my definition of success is achieving what I value. So I was like, okay, that's good. So then the facilitator says, your next question to me should be, in this season of my life, what do I value? So the guy asked the question and he answered, and it hit me like a light bulb. Because at that moment, there was only 4 things in my mind. Number 1, I need to get these bankers off my case. I need to get that noose off my neck. I need to get the creditors out of my face. Number 2, I need to finish with this divorce because this is killing me. Number 3, the kids need to be educated. They cannot be here in high school and then they're going to be dropped out and they're going to just end up doing nothing. I have very talented kids, not just because they're my kids, but they're really talented. So those were the 3 things. And the 4th thing was, whatever happens, I just got to be healthy. So that definition of success changed everything for me. And I reprogrammed my mind and said, okay, if I can achieve any one of these 4 things, am I successful? In my head, I answered, yeah, because that's the dominant thought in my head. So then, from the age of 43 to 49, I went on to start solving and facing each and every one of those problems head on. Right? I said, killing myself is the easy way out, but a lot of people will suffer in the process. Let me get this. What have I got to lose anyway? I've lost everything. The only way is up. They keep saying it. Okay, let's try it. And that's how I went. I went on, got the banks off my case. Then, on January 7th, 2021, the bank they basically gave me my get out of jail card. I got them out of my case. Few months later, I got my divorce done. Now my 2 children have educated, they've studied in the universities of their choice, and they're both independent and working. I think I'm still healthy. So for me, that was it. I've reached where I had to be. Thank you. And now I'm in a place where I'm saying, okay, this roller coaster ride taught me a lot. When I was young, I could handle all those emotions. Now I'm clear about one thing. There are many things I do not want to do. That journey has taught me a lot. So I've become so much clearer on what I want and what I want to do moving forward. So if you tell me, I have all these people approaching me with business ideas, I just keep saying no, I'm not interested. I don't want to do anything now that is going to take my peace and happiness. So I now very clear that in my rebuild, I know what I want. And that because I clear what I want, I don't have to go on a discovery phase. I will just stick to that path. And one of those things, and the reason I'm standing here, is to help create impact. I want to be a guide, a compass, to help entrepreneurs so that they don't have to go through what I went through. They say we entrepreneurs, we create wealth, yeah? But I challenge the thinking. How many have lost wealth? We're wealth destroyers. I destroyed wealth, right? And then I came back to this journey. So that's why I asked the question. You want to make money? You want to be wealthy? Great. But you want to keep it because you don't want to destroy it. And so this is my new journey. Hopefully I can help people avoid the mistakes I do, and I will talk the lessons that I would have told my younger 30-year-old self. So look forward to the interactions. Thank you.
I want to start by probably talking about 3 things. My name is Peter Diangui, and glad to be here. So 3 things I want to talk about identity, and the philosophy about why am I doing what I'm doing. But before even we got there, let me just briefly speak to where am I coming from. So I grew up in Nyeri. So if you hear me interchange L's and R's, you can understand. And grew up in Nyeri, brought up in Nyeri, and then I had a chance to come to Nairobi and live here for the first time after high school. But my dad said no. So what he said to me was, what you're going to do is to actually get a farm right here, and I want to know a little bit about you as you grow whatever you want to grow. So he gave me a small farm, about an acre, for a couple of months. This was before we entered university, because it used to be like a year before you get to a public university. So in that farm, I wasn't sure what to grow there. I actually hadn't done agriculture in school. So I decided to grow some cabbages because I had seen my uncle growing some cabbages. And when I grew those cabbages, there was a huge drought that happened, and we were not allowed to water cabbages because it was municipal water. So I'd wake up at night at 2 a.m. to water cabbages, and then at about 4 a.m. then I would go back to sleep. So that entire process took about 2 months, and then after a couple of months, there was some rain, and those cabbages became really, really big. And one of the high schools around where we lived decided to purchase all of them. And when they purchased, the first harvest gave me some money that I had never seen. And so now I was here going to university. This is the 90s, for those who think I'm young. And I had quite a number of, quite a huge amount of money than what university students would get for a loan. So I get into university, and I'm thinking, wow, actually I'm good at this. And I go on with university, and I had some entrepreneurship happening because of that capital. And after I finish, I go down under to Australia to study. And when I get to down under, I study and get into management consulting. The people who are here who might have done consulting know that you do well in selling slides, right? So you sell slideware to businesses and tell them what to do or what they can do. So it creates a feeling of bravado. It creates a sense of, I can do everything. And during when I'm in Aussie, I get headhunted by a huge enterprise that is starting to invest in an internet business right here in Nairobi. And that became OLX, and I became the driver of OLX in a couple markets in the continent. So once again, my bravado and my sense of bravery and the sense of achievement from a young, rural, growing up boy in Nyeri is being lifted up. I'm becoming more and more arrogant, right? Here I am coming from Aussie here. I have about 5 billion in advertising budget to drive this growth of this business across the continent. And so I am becoming more and more arrogant. At some point in 2017, or thereabout, the folks in the global office of OLX tell me now, we want to sell this business or close it down because it just doesn't seem to be making a lot of traction. And so thereon, I need to make a call. Am I going to look for another job? Am I going to continue with these guys because they are offering me an opportunity outside of the country in Dubai or in South Africa? Or what actually should I do? And I'm in my 40s then. And so I had always thought about running a business. And because of all this bravado that has been built in me, I'm thinking, look, anything that I'm going to touch now is going to be magic. I can raise any money from anyone because of my exposure, because of my experience, and because of what I've built. So that's my mindset. That's my bravado. speaking. And so I happened to meet my co-founder, who is also coming from another big brand. She was in Amazon. So here we are, two returnees from the diaspora, great experience. And now we are thinking, anything we touch from here, everybody would want it. And anyone can actually be able to fund us and want to fund us. So I decided to start the business that we run today called GOBAMBA. Now, after I officially leave OLX, I mean, I have enough resources to take me for a couple years without having to think about a job. But now here is a shocker. I go for a family meeting and there are some guests who are coming in, and my father and my sisters are introducing me. So previously, it was very, very easy. In fact, they took a lot of pride in me because they would say, have you ever seen that OLX ad? That's a guy who runs it. No, there's a lot of pride in a parent, in a sister, in a brother, in introducing, that guy is the one who runs that thing. So now, what's the introduction here? So I could see that they are having problems because they are saying, you know, you knew that thing called OLX? That's the guy who used to run it. And today, I saw the same thing when Bobby tried to introduce me right here. He said, you know, this is a guy that used to run OLX. So that's the identity that has been baked. And that identity has also baked a lot of bravado in you of false self idea of achievement. And I think a lot of us here who might leave corporate and go into entrepreneurship, this might be the first thing that you face. Who are you? For as long as your identity among your family members, among your friends, amongst even other people was driven by what you did, that becomes a huge part of your identity. And so for me, that was the first night that I asked myself, actually, okay, so who I am? Who am I? If my own father is having a problem introducing me, my own sister is having a problem introducing me, actually, who am I? And it went on because now we start this business and I have to go and introduce myself to potential partners. So you go to the gate and the guard asks you, so I hope everybody can understand Swahili here. Tuseme wewe ni nani? You know, who are you? You know, that's the security guard is asking me. So previously it was very easy because I would say, okay, this is so-and-so from OLX. And and the gate would open. So I go to this potential partners meeting and I'm there for about 30 minutes trying to call the guy because he's in a meeting to tell the guys to open the gate for me, right? I go to a service station because our initial business model was to deliver gas from service stations. And I go to the service station in Lavington, and we are saying, look, we want to put a poster here that we can deliver gas to people from this station. And we will pick the gas first and deliver it to the person's home. Then the guy is okay with that idea. But then before I leave, he asked me, hey, wait a minute. What about if you don't return the cylinder? I'm now trying to explain myself you should trust me because I'm so-and-so. No. Just tell me, how do I know and trust you're going to bring back the cylinder? So at that point, I tell the guy, I'm going to leave 5,000 deposit for the cylinder when it's peaked. He says, no problem, but just know only that one cylinder can be delivered. If you need to do another one simultaneously, then you have to leave another deposit of 5,000. So these thoughts start now to occupy me. We go to raise capital, and we are thinking, I'm thinking myself that this is very, very easy to actually do this. And it's almost now a year of trying to raise capital, and everybody asks, show me how this business even scales. And I'm thinking, man, I've done multinational, multi-country ventures. Why? I can't say that directly to an investor. It's their money. But that's what now is going through my mind. I know how to do this thing. I can scale this thing. At some point, this whole identity got me to start thinking about, actually, have I been living a false sense of success? Is entrepreneurship really for me? At that point, my boy is around 10 years old. So he's also asking me, okay, so actually, what do you do? Because in school, he would go and say, my dad is the one who actually runs. So everywhere, kila mahali is identity issues. What do you actually, Dad, what do you do? So at some point, I sit back and ask myself, was this actually a mistake? Should I go back into corporate and just thrive because that's the way I used to thrive? And one time, I get into an accelerator program. Again, another potential challenge of identity, because I actually used to run these accelerator programs. I would go and speak to people about how to run their businesses. In fact, I've met a couple of students here from universities that I used to actually lecture. And a guy asked me, so tell me, what's your purpose? What's your mission? Why are you doing what you're doing? And the minute I start to recount on the mission and purpose is when I start to get back to my senses. And I start looking at how we have a few employees here. Actually, maybe is to grow them to become better entrepreneurs. Maybe is to demonstrate to my son that you can grow an enterprise in Kenya with honesty and actually succeed. Maybe to help folks stop getting false, fake gas mitungis. So some of those thoughts get me back to the ground floor of, it's not about the money, it's not about the fame. It's about something more inner, something more positive, something that is not about bravado, something about helping others. And maybe that might put you into a state where you don't care about that other form of identity that had been built in years of bravado and corporate success. And so today, as we talk about identity, I think it is one of the areas for people who come from corporate. You're going to face a lot of these type of crises. And I think one way is to go back and think more humbly about your purpose, about your mission in life as an entrepreneur, minus any kind of bravado, any kind of big external achievement, and more around what is that internal fire of wanting to actually start a business. I'm going to stop there.